In Nepal, a remarkable story is unfolding. One of Asia's poorest countries has brought rhinos and tigers back from the brink of extinction, almost doubling their populations in just 15 years.
We cannot afford to lose a chance to save the rhino, and every number counts for those endangered species.
The Nepalese army is working with NGOs and forest communities to fight poaching.
If they fire, then we can open the fire. Don't doubt.
But as wildlife numbers rise, human-animal conflict is growing. And activists allege indigenous people are being driven out of their homes. 101 East travels to Nepal's jungles to investigate how the country has become a global conservation leader. It's dawn in Chitwan National Park. This is home to the vast majority of Nepal's one-horned rhinos and Bengal tigers. Authorities have received a tip-off that there are poachers deep inside the park and are preparing for a patrol on elephant back. We have been invited to accompany them on this sensitive mission. Colonel Sashikumar Karki from the Nepalese army is a veteran fighter against poachers.
घटना घटिसकेको तोमरथाली इलाकामा चाहिँ चोरी सिकारीको घटना घटिसकेको ठाउँ हो त्यो ठाउँमा चाहिँ अब अहिले बर्सातको कारणले गर्दाखेरि झाडी बुट्यानहरु बढेको हुनाले अब फुट पेट्रोलहरु गर्न चाहिँ एकदम त्यहाँ अहिले कठिन छ त्यही भएर आज तिम्रो जुन प्रकारको तिम्रो पेट्रोल प्लान अनुसार चाहिँ
More than 1,000 soldiers are stationed inside Chitwan, and their primary task is to stop poachers.
And look where now the patrol is heading. It's very much inaccessible to all the foot patrols, but we're using this elephant back patrol as a tools. Elephants provides us to operate, especially 24/7. All weather, all season, day, night, rain, whatever it is, obviously act as a deterrent to the bad guys.
The bad guys are poachers who have killed hundreds of rhinos over the years and smuggled their horns to countries like China and Vietnam for use in traditional medicine. During Nepal's civil war between 1996 and 2006, rhino numbers fell by 1/3. But now, the army's presence and some of the world's strictest anti-poaching laws have helped turn the tide.
So how come the army is involved in conservation and patrol activities in Nepal?
किनभने हामीले प्राकृतिक स्रोत साधनको चाहिँ हाम्रो र यसको चाहिँ जैविक विविधताको सुरक्षा गर्नु भनेको हाम्रो राष्ट्रिय सुरक्षाको र राष्ट्रिय इन्ट्रेस्टको चाहिँ विषयवस्तु पनि भएको हुनाले त्यस 116 जनासम्ममा चाहिँ हाम्रो चाहिँ नेपाली सेनाको चाहिँ सकल दर्जाहरूले आफ्नो कर्तव्य पालनको सिलसिलामा
In just the past year, the army has arrested 27 poachers in and around Chitwan. But today, there are none to be found. They make one final sweep using a drone. No poachers, but they do see a lot of rhinos. A 2021 census found the number of rhinos in Nepal had risen to 752, making it the world's second largest one-horned rhino population after India. And they're not the only native animal making a comeback. A more recent survey of tigers found that their population had almost tripled. Nepal is now a world leader in conservation. But it wasn't always this way. This land was once used as a royal hunting reserve. Visitors like Britain's Queen Elizabeth II were treated to rhino and tiger hunts by Nepal's kings.
But there was more hunting to come. The next prey was a rhino.
By the 1960s, there were fewer than 100 rhinos left in Nepal. To save the animal from extinction, Chitwan was founded in 1973. And 2 years later, specially trained soldiers started patrolling the park.
Right, so this is the conservation
schools. यो हाम्रो नेचर कन्जर्भेसन स्कुल हो नेपाल आर्मीको only one कन्जर्भेसन स्कुल हो 8 किसिमको तालिमहरु नेचर कन्जर्भेसनमा आवश्यक पर्ने एन्टी पोचिङसँग सम्बन्धित रुल्स एन्ड रेगुलेसन्स एक्ट कानुनहरुको विषयमा देखि लिएर ड्रोन टेक्नोलोजी मोटर बोटको सबै किसिमको तालिमहरु हामी यहाँ गर्छौं.
The soldiers here today are in the final leg of their training. After weeks of theory, it's time for a critical drill on how to capture and interrogate poachers in the park.
Anti-poaching आफैमा एकदमै क्रिटिकल अपरेसन हो. यसमा चाहिँ हाईली ट्रेन्ड सोल्जर्स मात्र युज हुन्छ सकेसम्म. यसमा चाहिँ बढी तालिम प्राप्त गरेको हामीले चाहिँ यो नेचर कन्जर्भेसन सम्बन्धी ट्रेनिङ प्राप्त र हाईली फायर गर्न फायरम्यानहरु शार्प शूटर लगायतको.
In many parts of the world, heavily armed poachers have overwhelmed conservation forces. In Nepal, however, not only are the soldiers well equipped, but they also have the right to engage poachers and to use lethal force if necessary.
If they fire, then we can open the fire. Don't यसमा डाउट हुनु पर्ने कुरै छैन हैन. But just fire under the below the knee. Yes, don't fire headshot, don't do that. Just fire here. Just our objective is to capture them, just only, not to kill them. Okay?
It's a delicate balance for these recruits.
Yes.
They'll be taking on their fellow citizens.
बिस्तारै रुख्नु होला गने बिस्तारै हल्डेर सरर खुर्र कुदेर जानी सबैजना उठेर सिधा हुने नि जानी फायर भाग प्रकाश भाग सकेसम्म भाग त सक्छ छैन भाग क्याप्चर गरेर कमात लडा न खुट्टा मात्निकन हान्न खुट्टा हान्न पाइन्छ करा न मार्यो भन्न मारो
While the right to use force seems to be effective against poachers, there are concerns about the increasing militarization of Nepal's natural reserves.
Okay.
Critics say this fortress model of conservation has led to human rights violations, especially against indigenous communities living around the park.
कुराहरुको पोजिटिभ कुरा गर्ने मान्छेहरु पनि हुन्छ नेगेटिभ गर्ने कुरा पनि हुन्छ. अन्त एक वर्षमा 40 वटा गैंडा पोचिङ भएको छ भने नेपालमा एउटा दुईटा भन्दा भएको छैन. किन त हाम्रो यो अहिलेको रिजल्ट हेर्नुस् टाइगर काउन्टको रिजल्ट हेर्नुस् राइनो सेन्ससको कुरा हेर्नुस्.
The results are impressive. While 12 rhinos were poached in 2010, in the decade since, there have been 6 years in which no rhinos were killed at all by poachers. No tiger has been shot here in over a decade. But this success has led to a new problem: growing human-wildlife conflict. It's an issue park officials like Assistant Warden Sarojmani Podel deal with regularly.
What's happening right now?
Yeah, rhino is eating paddy. Is lying in the paddy field.
Okay, so we're going to go, you're going to chase that away?
Village area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And follow my speaker.
Okay, this way. All right.
If we don't chase the rhino in the proper time, and they will be fired to us. That why you are sending this rhino in our village? They will ask. No, sorry, we are not sending. Rhino is going to self.
Rhinos often stray from the national park into surrounding settlements looking for food. A farmer can lose a few months' work in just a few hours. Damage that can cripple a family.
Where's the rhino?
Rhino is, I think, there.
So over there, beyond the fields over there, yeah?
Yeah. An elephant.
So you got your team of elephants ready?
Podel and his staff will use elephants to escort the rhino back into the national park. Operations like these are fraught with risk. Both rhinos and people are unpredictable. The rhino is a young male and doesn't like being told where to go. Experienced park staff try to block all escape routes. The challenge for Podell and his team is to maneuver the animal back into the reserve without injuring him or the villagers, while also preventing further damage to the crops. But despite their best efforts, the rhino enters another farmer's fields, sparking panic. The family is angry, watching the damage to their crops, and refuse to listen to the officials' pleas to stay away from the animal. If the rhino charges, their lives are at risk. Eventually, the rhino is shepherded back to the road. And as darkness falls, back towards the forest. For Podell and his team, the crisis was averted in the nick of time. Dealing with Nepal's growing population of tigers is even more challenging.
So we are going into this community forest, Kumro's buffer zone community forest.
Scientists like Dr. Baburam Lamichane are at the forefront of mitigating human-tiger conflict.
So there was some problem with tigers in recent time in this forest. So we are putting cameras to check which tigers are coming, whether there is some problematic tiger in this area or not.
Great, so let's see how this works.
Sure.
As their population has grown, tigers have killed more than 100 people in Nepal over the past decade.
This area is not very far from the forest, settlement. It is around like 300 meter to 500, I think, or something like that. So this area we have seen frequent tiger movement. Not all tigers are causing conflict, but there are specific tigers which have their own problem, or they are old individuals who are pushed out from their territory. So these are causing conflict. So if we put these camera traps here and then identify these tigers before they do any harm, and then we can remove these tigers from this risky zone, and then we can reduce the chances of conflict.
Is that quite an extreme and difficult step for you, capturing the tigers? Is that?
Yeah, it is quite difficult. First thing to decide which tiger to capture itself is difficult. When we decide this tiger to capture, then it's also a big job. Because after identifying that tiger, we need to look at where this tiger is. If we can find the tiger, then we can just go and use this traditional method of encircling it with the white cloth. And then generally, tigers don't cross that white cloth. And then we use elephants to push the tigers, and then use this darting the sedation drugs from the elephant bag. Every time it's a risk. So, of course, it's scary. We are dealing with the tiger which is dangerous. It's not only the normal tiger, it's sometimes man-eating tigers which attack people multiple times. It's scary, but it's also, we take our safety measures well.
Nepal's policy of capturing problem tigers and keeping them in captivity is a major strain on resources and not a long-term solution. It costs $50,000 a year to maintain a single tiger, money the cash-strapped government simply can't afford. A more cost-effective and sustainable strategy is to educate the communities that live around the tigers on how to minimize conflict. Community groups such as this one are key to Nepal's conservation model, maintaining almost a third of the country's forests.
सुन्नुस् है अहिले पनि हामीले लिएर छौं हामी यो तपाईहरुको यहाँ पछि हामी फेरि जंगलमा जान्छौं अब तपाईले जंगलमा जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ हसियाले हान्दिने भनेर अगाडि आएर यसो गरेर हिँड्नुहुन्छ अनि तपाईहरुको सबै फोटो परिरा हुन्छ खासै तपाईहरुको लागि राखेको हैन
कस्तो बेलामा चाहिँ बाघले आक्रमण गरिरहेछ हाम्रो यहाँ 4-5 वटा घटना भयो तपाईहरुले यसो हेर्नुस् त अब हामीले हाम्रो व्यवहार परिवर्तन गर्नु अब जनावरलाई नियन्त्रण गर्ने समस्या दिने बाघलाई हामीले नियन्त्रण गर्ने चाहिँ जस्तो कुनै बेला चाहिँ अब बाघ देखिहाल्यो एकदमै नजिकमा चाहिँ देखिहाल्यो भने त्यसमा चाहिँ बिस्तारै यसरी बाघलाई चाहिँ हेर्दै पछाडी हट्नुपर्छ भनिन्छ कि अगाडि देख्यो भनेर अनि फेरि पछाडीबाट दौडिन थालेको बेलामा पछि आक्रमण पनि गर्न सक्छ त्यो भएर यीको साना साना कुरा
But human casualties from encounters with Nepal's tigers and rhinos keep rising. In a nearby village, I meet Kundan Lama, a farmer who frequently goes to the forest to get fodder for his goats.
तो वहाँ पे आप क्या कर रहे थे? आप घास काट रहे थे? तो बताएंगे दोबारा हाँ।
मैं इसके घास काट रहा था पानी पड़ रहा था
बारिश हो रहा था
हाँ बारिश पानी पड़ रहा थी अनि गैंडा इधर से आया यता बढाएर म यसरी यहाँनिर हाने त्यो खुट्टाले यसरी दबाएको भए त म मर्थे उले हान्यो हान्दा 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 पछाडीबाट मेरो भेनाले लठीहरु हान्नी के हान्नी गरेर चाहिँ बचायो मलाई
तो अब इसमें हाथ में कैसे इसको उठा नहीं सकते हैं इसको
यो हाथ इसरी उठा नहीं सकता ये हाथ से जाता है ऐसे जाता है
हाँ
ये हाथ को यो हाथ को चाहिँ अंदर से हड्डी चर्का है
और फिर आपको जैसे अभी काम करने में या पैसा कमाने में कुछ नहीं कर सकते इस टाइम पे
मैं घरमा अब मै हो कमाएर दिनुपर्ने अब बुढीहरुलाई बच्चाहरुलाई अब म आफै नसकेपछि अलि दुःखको कुरा हो त्यो दुःख लाग्छ
The park administration paid for Kundan's treatment, but he's still waiting to receive a disability benefit from the government. Even so, he has nothing but respect for the forest's animals.
अब त अब उनीहरु बस्ने ठाउँै हो हैन अब गाह्रो त अब उनीहरुलाई पनि अब सडक त भइराख अब त्यो गैंडाले गर्दाखेरि पनि ग्यासहरु पनि त आउने हो नि त यो सौरा लाइनमा यही गैंडाले गर्दाखेरि ग्यासहरु बढ्ने हो त्यसको लागि त अब त्यो पनि अब राम्रो त राम्रै हो.
But amongst indigenous groups, there is growing resentment at the price they say they're paying for Nepal's conservation model. When Chitwan was established, tens of thousands of indigenous people were evicted from their homes and moved to areas outside the reserve. These communities receive little tourism revenue and are routinely fined or arrested for venturing into the park to fish and to collect grass. Near Chitwan, I go to a meeting organized by human rights lawyer Shankar Limbu. Members of the Kumal and Bote indigenous groups complain that in addition to their land, they're now also losing their traditional livelihoods.
त्यसो भएदेखि अब गएर चाहिँ कुमाल बोटे माझी मुसर जति पनि राष्ट्रिय निकुञ्जका छेउमा छन् नि मैले लाइसेन्सले म मरे भने अब वञ्चित भयो त मेरो संस्कार मेरो गएर चाहिँ तपाईको रीतिरिवाज मेरो छोरामा जान्छ कि जाँदैन भावी पुस्तामा जान्छ कि जाँदैन उले अधिकार पाउने कि नपाउने यो मान्छेले होटलको पनि अर्थ दुईटा हुन्छ.
Jai Mangal Kumal is a local community leader.
साङ्ग्रिला होटल खुलेको छ काठमाडौँको होटल यहाँ आएको छ नेपालको धनी मान्छेलाई भएको होला सहर बजारलाई भएको होला तर यो निकुञ्ज क्षेत्रमा जो नजिकमा गएर चाहिँ बसोबास गरेछ त्यो मान्छेहरुको निम्ति यो फाइदा छैन.
Shankar Limbu says he has extensively documented abuse against indigenous communities by park authorities and the army.
मेरो संस्था भनेको नेपालका आदिवासीहरूको मानवाधिकार सम्बन्धी वकिल समूह हामीलाई के भन्छ काठमाडौँमा बस्दाखेरि एकदम राम्रो छ चितवनमा सबैको समस्या समाधान गर्यौं भनेर उनीहरुले रिपोर्ट निकालेछ. अब यो समस्या समाधान भछ कि छैन हामीलाई थाहा छैन. त्यही भएर आज हामी तपाईहरु कहाँ बुझ्न आएको छौं. त्यो माछा मारेर तपाईले जीविका चलाउँदाखेरि र अहिलेमा गाह्रो अप्ठ्यारो कस्तो छ?
हाम्रो रीतिरिवाज उहिलेदेखिको माछा मार्न जाँदाखेरि मेरो स्यानेमा बितेर हामी यसरी माछा मार्न आएको सर छोड्दिनु भनेर भन्दाखेरि त माछा मार्न आएको तिमीहरूले गैँडा तस्करी गर्न आएको खुर्कै यहाँ गाडीमा बस नत्र भने गोली ठोक्छ भनेर भन्यो है।
A key element of Shankar Limbu's work with these communities is educating them about their rights.
आर्मी तपाईहरु कहाँ आयो, माछा मार्दै गर्दाखेरि तपाईहरुसँग लाइसेन्स छ, तपाईहरुलाई कसरा लग्यो, तपाई के भन्नुस् भने यो ऐन पल्टाउनुस्, पहिले राष्ट्रिय निकुञ्ज को ऐन पल्टाउनुस् र त्यसको दफा 5 नम्बर, कति नम्बर? मेरो हात सम्झिनुहुन्छ? त्यो औँला कतिवटा छ? 10 नम्बरमा माछा मार्न अनुमति लिनुपर्ने। तपाईले गएर हात जोड्नु, यो तपाईको अधिकार हो। अधिकारको लागि हात जोड्ने होइन, अधिकार भनेको लडेर लिने हो।
Limbu believes the army has no place within Nepal's national parks.
When the national park was established, they used army, and the army killed number of people at that time, and they also raped the women. So the national park is, in the context of indigenous peoples, what they say is a colonization, because they lost their land, even they don't have a right to live here. And they don't have a right to life here.
The Nepalese army denies being responsible for abuses against indigenous people, telling 101 East the allegations are baseless, and that all personnel, if found guilty, are treated as per the law. Last year, a Nepalese court sentenced a sergeant to 25 years in prison for killing a tribal man. The army states it is trying to improve its relationship with communities bordering the park, focusing on outreach and education.
Hello, namaste. Hello, namaste.
Meanwhile, the fight to save the country's wildlife continues. Authorities say every animal counts.
In which condition did you rescue her?
They were found alone in the jungle without its mother. Since the mother did not show up, we decided to rescue them because we could not leave them alone for a long time, because they might die of dehydration or the deprivation of food, or they might be killed by predators also. And we have been counting these rhinos every 5 years, and every number counts for those endangered species. So we cannot afford to lose a chance to save the rhino.
A few hours later, the team gets an urgent call about a trapped rhino deep inside Chitwan.
पहिला दलवलमा कस्तो खाले फस्या हो के दाँतै गर्नुपर्ने हो कि पुस हैन दाँत गरेर उ गरेर तान्न पर्ने हो कि त्यति पुस गरे हुने खाले हो
हात्ती त्यही राख्नु
अनि त्यही राख्ने भन त हात्ती त
The team sets out on elephant back to rescue the trapped animal. 34 wild rhinos died in Chitwan last year due to natural causes, with many drowning in flash floods.
So this is one of the most common reason for rhino death in Chitwan National Park. So luckily this one has been traced, and hopefully we can successfully rescue that one.
To reach the rhino, the elephants must cross a river in heavy post-monsoon flow. Luckily for us, they know how to swim.
So they're over there, right?
Just as we're about to reach the rhino, the presence of the elephants spur it into action, and it pulls itself out of the swamp.
Oh, wow. Okay. There's 3 elephants here, and there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 others in that direction. And all of these have been deployed to save just one animal.
Our expedition makes clear the amount of effort that goes into protecting Nepal's vulnerable species. Once almost poached to extinction, today this rhino is a clear symbol of the country's conservation success. Significant challenges remain, especially for indigenous groups struggling with human-wildlife conflict and loss of livelihood. But as the world tries to reverse historic biodiversity loss, this small Asian nation, with its thriving animal populations and community forests, is a powerful example that progress is possible.